Some of us were talking after Sunday's preach from Genesis 23 about the us and them tension that always surrounds the people of God. In the world but not of the world. Mighty princes and princesses, but also aliens and strangers under pressure to conform, who need to remember and protect their true identity. That's not a comfortable place to be. So the temptation is to look for ways to wriggle out of that place. We can't. It fully goes with the territory of being the children of God. Not only does Jesus tell his disciples, if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. That's John 15 verse 18. But dip into the story of the people of God at practically any point where they are being faithful, and you will find this kind of pattern emerging. You read the book of Esther, for instance, and you think to yourself, does Mordecai really have to provoke Haman like that? I mean, why can't he just bow down to the man but keep his fingers crossed? Let's leave that on one side for a moment and observe that Mordecai and Esther are both mighty in the land. She's a queen and he is obviously not a nobody. And at the same time they are aliens and strangers because they are exiles. They're far from home. And Mordecai cannot conform to the behaviour required of him with regard to Haman because, chapter 3 and verse 4, he's a Jew. He cannot bow down and worship a false god. You look at how the story goes forward and you see the same thing that we noticed in Abraham on Sunday. From this awkward us and them position where God's people are the vulnerable ones but cannot conform. The negotiations with the world are conducted with humility and respect as well as inflexibility. It begins as Mordecai and Esther both humble themselves before God in prayer and fasting, and true humility always comes from this point. Esther shows the king then all proper respect as she makes her approach in chapter 5. But she is coming prepared to die if she has to. If I perish, I perish. And even when she finally declares her request to the king in chapter 7, notice the way she phrases it. If I have found favour with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king. Now let's pick up again that impulse we have to ask Mordecai, was this all really necessary? Let's go ahead and write our own version of the story where it doesn't have to be this way. Now, our version will be much less risky for Esther and Mordecai, but how will it end? Are the Jews safe? Are they still a distinctive people at the end of the book? If not, then doesn't the Bible have to stop at the book of Esther? And how is that good news for any of us? It's always an interesting exercise, more than that, to ask ourselves what we would have done. The answer is probably simple, isn't it? We would do whatever we are doing now. We read the book of Daniel and we don't see the kind of faith and conviction in ourselves that can lead to the lion's den or the fiery furnace. Well, we forget the story doesn't start there. It starts with a quiet word with the king's steward about refusal to eat the royal delicacies. If right now, in the small stuff, I am training myself to find ways to conform and compromise, then the people around aren't getting the witness that they need, and the tougher challenges will meet with the same approach. And the salt will have lost its saltiness, and that's bad news for everyone. If you have been, thank you for listening.